Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Dave Lucas and you're watching a special edition of All Points, and we are so excited to have these segments of All Points for you with H.D. Graham out of Meigs County, Ohio, and that doesn't sound like a heroic place maybe to you, but it is a very heroic place. He's here on the Rocking G Ranch here in Meigs County, and Harold Graham spent his major career in the Air Force as a Chief Master Sergeant, is that correct? And in the Special Forces of the Air Force, which is unusual in itself because they were an unusual set of Special Forces. And we're going to be talking about his books. He has 7 of them. If you haven't watched the initial or introduction segment to this series of videos, you'll want to be sure and do that. It's segment 1, H.D. Graham, the introduction. And we're going to be talking about his first book. He has 7 in total. And he recorded all of his escapades and all the circumstances about his service as a Special Operations Master Sergeant. So this is pretty cool, and we are so glad to have H.D. Graham on our program. H.D., thank you again so much for doing these series of videos. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Dave.
Now, this first book is entitled Mother, Please Let Me Go. Now, last segment, you mentioned that you had to kind of talk to your mom about joining the Air Force. Your brother joined the Navy, if I recall.
Yes, my twin brother.
Your twin brother joined the Navy, and you wanted to go to the Air Force. Talk to us a little bit about why your mom resisted. She said she'd let you go and then sort of resisted. What was that all about? I'm assuming that's what this means.
Well, my mother was really concerned about the developments in Southeast Asia, and she was afraid I'd end up in Vietnam or Cambodia or Laos, or perhaps Thailand, and she just didn't want me, one of her twins, involved in those things. And of course, later when my twin brother joined the Navy, he ended up in Southeast Asia on a patrol plane that was patrolling the South China Sea off the coast of Vietnam.
And you ended up there several times as well.
Yes, I ended up actually in country, and he was actually flying the coast.
Flying over the coast, and you were in country. You were in the Air Force. You were on the ground a lot, and he was in the Navy in the air a lot.
And isn't that odd? Because Air Force is supposed to be flying, but I can tell you for a fact, there's probably 6-8% of the Air Force people actually get to fly. Most Air Force people are ground troops. And in the Navy, about 90% of them do not fly. Most of them are on the ocean or the waterways of the nation, in the Coast Guard, and only about 10% of them get to flying. So it was opposite
That's
for
really
my twin
strange.
brother and I.
So talk to me a little bit about your mom, and she was resistant. How did you finally convince her to let you sign up?
Well, she had promised me all along that I could join the military. Of course, that was before Vietnam heated up.
Right.
And I graduated in 1960, but she saw this in 1959. She was afraid there was going to be a big military conflict in Southeast Asia, and she didn't want her twins to be any part of that.
And so they both ended up there.
Yes, we both ended up there.
Well, this first book, talk to me about why you decided to write this book. What prompted you to write this first book, Mother, Please Let Me Go, an Air Force Career to Remember?
Actually, it was pretty simple. The Special Forces thought it was a unique individual that could be assigned to them from the Air Force, a flyboy, a kid. The Air Force apparently didn't have any men to assign to them, so they assigned a young kid, a flyboy. Of course, they called me a flyboy. I was not Air Force aviation at the time. But they thought it was really odd that the Air Force would pick someone so inexperienced and so young to be assigned to duty with the Special Forces. And of course, I thought it was odd myself, but then I knew how I got over there. I had been assigned to Langley Air Force Base and got out of the good graces of a colonel who was in charge of assignments. And I ended up in the Vietnamese language school, then ended up in Vietnam for almost 25 straight months. And really, it was the highlight of my military career.
So when you finished that tour, did you have this idea that you were going to write this book, or did it take you coming back stateside and mulling it over and finally saying, I'm going to put pen to paper and make this happen?
Well, actually, on my second TDY to Vietnam, which started in March '63, the Special Forces kept telling me, quite a few of them, HD, if you survive this war, and they called it a war then, if you survive this war, you have got to write a book about your experiences because you're the first Air Force person that's ever been assigned direct duty with the Special Forces in Vietnam. So you got to make sure you record all this for history.
So people were saying to you, make sure you write this down.
They said it all along.
And TDY, for those of you who didn't watch the last segment, is temporary duty.
Temporary duty.
I'm
right.
learning, you see. I'm learning. And this book cover is good. This has got you. Is this you laying down on the...
It's supposed to be.
Okay, so the book cover is interesting in itself. You'll want to get this book, and we'll talk to him in a few moments about why to get this. This discovers or uncovers your, what, your 3 or 4 assignments. Was this just while you were in Vietnam, or are there other things in here?
That book covers my life from the time we moved to Ohio in 1957 till I graduated from high school. Then I went to Virginia, worked the summer. I stayed with my brother at the time, my brother Jack. He was stationed at Langley Air Force Base. And I worked the summer. Then after I turned 17, I came back to Ohio to press my mother to sign my enlistment papers like she had promised she would do. And that took me about 2 or 3 months to get that promise fulfilled. And then I joined the Air Force, and I was extremely happy about that because I wanted to follow in the footsteps of my brother. The book also covers all my TDYs to Vietnam. I guess I should say first it covers basic training, Langley Air Force Base, all my TDYs to Vietnam, assignment at Nahal Air Base, Okinawa, and every base I was ever assigned at, even temporary duty in France a couple of times.
I see. So this is a book for those of you who want to go back and get the straights about the conflict as it began to develop in Vietnam and as it heated up. And here's a picture. I just thumbed through this again, and I've read this book, but for some reason I missed this. The Boeing jetliner landed at Hill Air Force Base in the fall of 1979, carrying the Space Shuttle Enterprise.
Yes.
And it was an occasion for open house at the base. And so this picture, did you take this, or were you there and saw that?
Yes, I took that picture.
He took this picture. You can't see that. You have to buy the book to get it. But it's filled with all kinds of pictures in here talking about his life as one of the initial people assigned in Vietnam and going back and forth. First they sent you to translation school, and then you were a loadmaster, and you hauled animals around. But talk to me about this cover, this story in itself. I'm sure this is one of the reasons you're going to want to purchase this book, H.D. Graham, Mother, Please Let Me Go. Talk to me about, you're laying on the floor here, your hands are tied behind you. What's that all about?
Well, I was on the Air Force IG team at the time, the Inspector General's team. That is a team of Air Force professionals, supposed to be, and they go around to the various military bases and evaluate their combat readiness. And this particular incident took place in Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay.
And I was mistaken for Colonel Beardsley, the IG team chief, at the time, because at the time I was also a Chief Master Sergeant, and everybody called me Chief, Chief, Chief.
Oh, so they heard that.
Well, and Colonel Beardsley was the chief of the IG team, and the terrorists got the chiefs mixed up. They got me mixed up with Colonel Beardsley, and they thought I was Colonel Beardsley's chief of the IG team. And they did not understand the Air Force terminology as Chief Master Sergeant is always called Chief, addressed as Chief. So they came in when we had gone out to dinner with some Puerto Rican National Guard people. When we came back, we walked down the hall of the motel, and as we dropped people to their various rooms, we talked a few minutes, told them good night, and went on down the hall till we dropped the next couple of guys off till they go to their room, and mine was at the far end. Well, when I got to my room, I was the only individual left. There wasn't anyone to tell me good night. So I went into my room and noticed right off that things were different, and I should have left immediately, but I didn't. I noticed the door was closed to the bathroom, and I had left it open. I had also left a light burning in the bathroom, and there was no light on in the bathroom. And I had left the lamp on in the regular motel area where the bed is, and I think they had a kitchenette and so forth there. And there was no light burning in there. And, of course, it got my curiosity aroused, so I had to see what was going on. And I walked in there and lit the lamp, and about the time I lit the lamp, I thought it was a Spanish-American come out of the bathroom, and he had a knife and a pistol. And I thought, my goodness, what in the world is going on? Well, about the time he came into the room where I was, there was another individual there, and he also had a pistol. And we got in a big fight. Of course, I had been to the Vietnamese language school, and then I had learned martial arts from the Special Forces. And that was absolutely great but painful experience. And so I was not going to be intimidated with a couple of people, one with a knife and the other one had put his pistol away, but the other one still had his pistol. And I just didn't feel like I was going to be intimidated by them. They told me I had to come with them. One of my troopers had been in an accident, and they called me Colonel Beardsley. I said, no, I'm Chief Master Sergeant Graham. And then the one with the pistol said, you chief? I said, yes, I'm a chief. Well, they still thought I was the IG chief. So they decided, I guess they decided they were going to kidnap me. I think that was the motive, because I was supposed to have been head of the IG team. And I was determined I was not going to leave the room. And we got into a big fight. And the one with the weapon, he ended up coming up pretty close to me, waving it in my face, and I kicked him in the stomach, and somewhat lower perhaps. And he took a tumble over the coffee table and hit his head against the wall, and he was out. Then the guy with the knife attacked me. And in the meantime, this other individual had came up behind my hand, or behind my back, and he grabbed my arms and tied them behind my back. But the guy with the knife, he had cut my shirt pretty well up, and that really ticked me off because it was a brand new shirt my loving wife had just bought for me. First time I'd ever worn it, so I really got...
You were mad.
I really got aggravated and mad at him, so I cleaned up on him pretty good too with my feet. And then first thing I know, I felt myself falling. Someone hit me in the back of the head, and I did not know he had a pistol at the time, and he hit me in the back of the head with a pistol. And the only thing I remember is falling.
So they were 3 against 1.
Yes, they ended up being 3 against 1.
There was one guy in front, another guy was behind. You took care of him. Then some other guy snuck in from somewhere.
And I woke up. I was laying on the floor on my stomach with my hands tied behind my back, and I had a gag across my mouth, but I was alone in the room. And I finally was able to get up, and after being quite dizzy for a while, I was able to back up to the door and open it, and went down the hall, kicked on the colonel's doors. They came to the door and asked me what was going on. Of course, I couldn't tell them because I had a gag across my mouth. But they finally cut the ropes loose. They were so securely tied they had to be cut with a knife. And Colonel Coward, he took the gag off, and I told him what happened. Well, they called in the CIA and the FBI, and they finally determined they were terrorists from Cuba, and they were trying to capture me like they had a general in Italy a few months earlier.
Were they hold them for ransom, or were they wanting them to release other people, or what was their motive for, you think, the kidnapping?
Mostly it was to get some of their terrorists released in various prisons across numerous countries.
I remember them doing it at the
Yes.
time, and they thought you were a high-value target. And
they thought I was a high-value target, and really I had not much value at all.
But you ended up being valuable because you cleaned up 2 of them, and hadn't been for the one guy clubbing you in the head with his pistol, you might have got him too.
Well, when the FBI and CIA did get there a couple hours later, they found a rope ladder going down to the first floor, over the balcony going down to the first floor, and a lot of blood on the roof of the first floor roof, and I guess I had injured them quite a bit.
That's all covered in this book, Mother, Please Let Me Go, An Air Force Career to Remember by H.D. Graham. That probably is a fascinating story, but I think that's just one of many that I read in here that were just, is there something in particular in this book that you, looking back now, say to yourself, boy, I'm so glad I put that in there? Is there a story or a mention? I know there are all kinds of great stories in here that people would love to look at it, but it's pretty fascinating, really. Is there anything in here you'd like to mention that folk really respond to?
Well, actually, there was, after I had finished the book and it had been published for 3 or 4 years, a couple of the individuals I had mentioned in the various books had told me I forgot to mention this story and I forgot to mention that story. Well, come to find out, there was probably 12, 14 stories I forgot to mention that should have been included, but I didn't think they were noteworthy to revise the book and so forth. But there were quite a few experiences that should have been mentioned that I had failed to mention.
Well, I know, having read this, that it's packed full of really interesting materials that you'll want to get a hold of. Again, it's called Mother, Please Let Me Go, An Air Force Career to Remember by H.D. Graham. Would you talk to us a moment about how that somebody can get a hold of one of these books? Naturally, they can't reach out and grab this one, so how can they get one of these? You mentioned to me that they are on Amazon, but there are other ways to get it as well.
Yes, mainly Amazon has them at, they're supposed to be $29.95 each hardback, and each softback $19.99.
So this is available in hardback and in
softback. All the books are available in hardback or softback. And you can also get them from Xlibris.com or randomhouse.com, because Xlibris is part of Random House now. And you can get them directly from me, and if you get them directly from me, just at my home address, 36008 State Route 143, Pomeroy, Ohio, 45769. I charge $20 for hardbacks plus shipping, or $15 for softbacks plus shipping, and I will also personalize them and sign them for you.
He will sign them if you order them from him, and you won't get that signed copy if you get it from Amazon, whatever's most convenient for you. But would you give them the address once again so that they can jot that down?
Yes, it's 36008 State Route 143, Pomeroy, it's Pomeroy, Ohio 45769. And I might add that with Amazon's prices and Xlibris prices, they sell them all for $29.99 or $19.99, and generally they add $19.99 shipping and handling.
Wow, so it would be expedient for you to get in touch with the author himself. He will sign it for you, which would really be good, because if I were able to buy all 7 of them, I'd get them signed, and that's what you want to do. And if you send him his name, or if you want to give this to a friend, or you want to give this at a holiday time or a special gift or birthday, you send the name that you want him to your uncle, or if you've got a brother or someone that might have served in Vietnam or in the Air Force or in Special Ops, you can make sure that you give that. It's Mother, Please Let Me Go. It's one of 7 that he's written. It's the first of a series that we're doing here. We had an introductory series, which was segment 1. This is segment 2. We're talking about his first book here. It's really a dynamite book. And Harold Graham deserves your honor for his service to our country. And by reading this book, you get a really broad view of exactly how things developed in Vietnam, a sort of a backdoor view from somebody who got out of high school, joined the Air Force, ended up in Special Ops, and ended over in Vietnam, transporting water buffalo in the CIA plane Air America. That's fascinated me. HD, thanks for talking with us, and we want to thank all of you for tuning in. We appreciate so much you giving us this opportunity to talk to you about H.D. Graham. We'll be back. This is segment 2. We'll be back with segment 3 and another book, but if you want to get this book, Mother, Please Let Me Go. This is the first in a series of 7 he has written. We want to make sure you do that. I'm Dr. Dave Lucas. You're watching a special segment of All Points, and we'll be back with segment 3, so don't go away. Watch, be sure and catch segment 3, or go back and watch segment 1. Until next time, I'll talk to you later.